I have to harken back to the 90s when I was in the Air Force. And one of the things we did in the Air Force is we said, you know, if an air base got compromised, it was the wing commander, the one-star general's challenge. So they escalated the responsibility of, if there's a security breach, you're the one accountable. What happens when you make the head of an agency accountable for cybersecurity is it gets taken seriously. And I think that's going to be part of the executive order, is to say, hey, listen, folks at the top, cybersecurity, if there's a problem, if there's something that goes wrong, it's you that's held accountable to it. That'll make a difference.
What about the spending on cybersecurity? It seems to have lagged the threat that has been on the rise.
Well, I don't know. I think that when it comes to cybersecurity, there's a lot of deterrence in cyberspace, but there's also a lot of deterrence outside of cyberspace. So when you look at the spending to deter cyber attacks, it's a pretty broad swath of things that might be applicable to that.
When we're looking at where these attacks, these threats are originating from, it's interesting, just today the news, Michael Flynn resigning from the National Security as a National Security Advisor. It looks as though perhaps the desire to become closer to Putin will therefore become slightly less within the White House. Is that a good thing or a bad thing from your point of view?
Well, I'm not really sure. As a cyber guy, all I can tell you is I observe what Russia does in cyberspace. They do cyber operations like most modern nations do, and I don't think that's going to change. Whether you have a Republican in the House, a Democrat in the House, there will always be cyber operations by modern nations. It's the oldest or second oldest profession is espionage. So.
But are they growing in ferocity, in pace?
You know, I saw it grow a little bit. I should say this. I saw it change. I first started responding to breaches out of Russia in 1995 when I was in the military. So I've seen this for several decades. Something that changed in 2014 is, for the first time in my career, as we responded to breaches that we attribute to the Russian government, is they didn't go away, meaning they knew we were responding to a breach. We thought it was the Russian government, and they let us observe what they were doing. Their counter-forensics changed. The fact that they didn't go away, I think their targeting got a little broader, and I think that's part of the reason why their counter-forensics went down, is they're operating at a scale and scope that's a little broader or a little wider than they're used to. And then recently they also started hacking and potentially leaking documents. So we see the rules of engagement change over time, and I think that'll just continue.
I'm going to bring it back to the administration, because Thomas Bossert, assistant in terms of handling counterterrorism, is he the right man? He certainly has experience within cybersecurity.
Well, I've only spoken to Tom one time so far, but I can tell you this. I know the people he knows. We had a great conversation, and he's talking to the right people. So there's plenty of folks that have been in cybersecurity for 15, 20, 25 years that get to see on the front lines what the adversaries are doing, and Tom's got all these people and all this capability at his fingertips.
How does a company like FireEye capitalize on the sudden surge of whether it's just media perception of more attacks or indeed the real nature of more and more ferocious attacks?
Well, one of the things that we've always wanted to do, and we think is strategically important, is respond to every breach that matters. That's how you learn what are the threat actors doing, and then you also get to see firsthand how is our technology being evaded, how are we being circumvented. So that's a strategic thing for us. So every time you see the threats rise, you see the attacks rise, you see FireEye more involved in figuring out what happened, what to do about it. When the threats abate, you also want to have that same knowledge, though. Right now, I can tell you this, no matter where we are in the globe, if the threats abate a little bit here in the United States, the Middle East pops up. In South Korea, you have North Korea doing the attacks. The Middle East right now is just a hot zone of cyber activity.